All right, we're here with Ammon Takau. He's one of my best friends. We've known each other for what? It's been 3, 4 years now.
Yeah, 3 to 4, somewhere around there.
Yeah. And Ammon is we sit down almost weekly, if not a little bit more than that now, and we always talk about business because both of us are trying to work on our businesses and what's next in the world. And Ammon is extremely good at marketing, at sales, at networking, knows a lot of different people. Every time I sit down with you, you're like, oh yeah, I sat down with this other multi-millionaire. I sat down with this guy. He's doing this huge thing, um, and and so yeah, I'm just excited to sit down with you today.
Well, awesome. No, thanks for bringing me in. Don't really do these that often, so it's fun.
Well, you better get used to it because you're gonna start doing a lot more.
Don't know about that,
um, Kind of where I want to dive into first was you growing up. What's kind of your background of how did you kind of a little bit about you growing up, and then how did you get into entrepreneurship?
but so I grew up in Hurricane, Utah, small little town. I'm half Tongan, half white. So my dad came from the island of Tonga, and he grew up there. And they met in Hawaii. They moved to Hurricane, and somehow he started, some reason he wanted to raise his kids in Hurricane. Um, but my family was hardcore sports family. So my dad played rugby. He played for the United States, their international team. So he played the highest level professional, and he was very involved in our lives. With sports, for me, it was football and basketball. And that was like our second religion. I mean, we had our religion that he was just as devout, of course, a little bit more. But then football was the second religion, or sports in general. um, and then business was kind of that third religion, uh, where I learned a lot of the entrepreneurship spirit, I would say. My mom, my dad, they've grown up, and they dabbled into entrepreneurship. The spirit became so more strong, like a lot stronger as I started to grow. They had their dreams, their visions. My mom, she had a preschool of her own. So it's been going on for 26, 25 years, something like that. And so that was her venture. She's been doing that. It's been a really stable part of our family. My dad was in the construction realm. When they were newlywed, and they were living in Hawaii, and he had his own crew. He was doing really well there. Came here, started his own crew, ran things. The '08 downturn definitely threw a loop with his business and our whole family, for several reasons. He had some had bad health and other things like that, to where it financially for our family it kind of took a little bit of a nosedive. But then watching them and their spirit, that the American dream drive that they've always had, the entrepreneurial visions and everything like that. That was from like '08 till today. And so watching them trying to crawl back out, or provide a better life for the family, at the same time trying to strive for dreams. That's kind of where I got the first taste of entrepreneurialism. So
Mm. So he had his own business doing construction, or was he a lead in a construction company? How?
no, he would work for himself.
Okay.
So yeah, self-employed. So sorry.
No,
No,
you're all good. Your dad, he was running his own construction kind of company for his own
mhm.
crew, um, and and then your mom, which she still does today. Was there a time where she didn't do the preschool?
Just when they were newlywed in Hawaii. She was working in Hawaii for, that's where she got her education in. It was early childhood development.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
and so when they moved back is when she, I believe, started it up. And so she's been doing that for as long as I can remember. I went through it. My siblings went through it. But yeah, that was kind of the financial stability in our family, even though, it's not like it's not huge financial income, but it was just enough for raising a family and doing that kind of stuff. And it's been cool to see because we've talked a lot about the quadrants of, going from an employee to self-employed. I think part of generational, knowledge is learning how to go from the employee to self-employed, self-employed to the next quadrants and so forth. So I think that she can still, I just talked to her yesterday, she can still be able to move, to the different quadrant and not have to teach and make it to where it's a lot more profitable. But yeah, so she's always been doing that.
She can go from the self-employed over to the big business side where her business is automated.
Yeah.
Right? That's cool.
So yeah, it's been fun to see. I also have seen the darker side of entrepreneurship of struggle and grind, financial hardships. So I've been able to see kind of a lot of that side. My parents.
What do you feel like are the biggest lessons that watching your parents, and them being their own entrepreneurs in their own way? What were some of those big takeaways you learned from them? That maybe you wanted to emulate some of these things, and then some of the other things you want to do differently.
Well, I think the biggest thing that I can think of right now is the mindset, and because it's a mindset of accountability. It's a mindset of you can strive for greatness, right? And having that hope. And greatness is different to everyone as well. Even I'm kind of going through back and forth what I define to be successful. Because just within the past few months, that hasn't changed for me. But their mindset and especially my dad, I grew up a lot with him being his physical labor in the construction world. So after the '08, me, my brother, we became his workers, and we worked for food and for a place to sleep at night. So, we learned, we worked a lot with my dad, and he taught us a lot to the way to think. And so the mindset and how to critically think are the biggest things that I've learned from both of my parents. And it's fun because both of them have different strengths and different things, but when it is through the entrepreneurship lens, it's mindset and how to critically think and problem solve.
So like what were some examples of were they oh, what would you do if you were in this situation? Would they give you some of those, or how would they teach you that?
Yeah, so as we're in the 115-degree weather, I remember this day. It was 115 degrees, summer, and we're moving block to go and put it on, to go and create a block wall. Okay. It's just boiling hot. I remember me and my brother why the freak are we here at this time? Yeah. So there was some deadline or issue that we didn't know. We were just mindlessly working. But my dad would always have the radio on. With talk radio, where they're not to be political or whatever you agree with, talk radio, it talks a lot about current issues, um, and influential people, often entrepreneurs, the concept of capitalism. So it was a lot of discussion that my dad would have us, he would stop the radio and then he would give us a scenario and then see what our thoughts are on it and try to challenge our thoughts, and sometimes it would be arguing back and forth, sweating like crazy, moving the stupid block, and
Yeah.
but it was always like that. It was always, we're listening, and then he would stop it and then get our thoughts and then challenge the way we think and challenge and push us to be critical or think about it differently and try to find the underlying reasons or thinking outside of the box. So a lot of thought, stimulation in those earlier times. So that was one way.
That's really cool. So how did I'm sure talking about just politics with your dad and then going into was it mostly politics that you guys would talk about, or was it also like, hey, we have 100 blocks out here, rather than us doing the work, like who could we hire to get over here and how much would we pay them in order to make a profit, and what was it?
No, and so I think that's where the generation will become better than the generation below it. So for him, it was never some of those finite skills with math and him sitting us down and going through, how do we get someone to replace us? How do we do this or that? And I think it's just because everyone progresses at a different pace. He came, just so you know, he grew up in the island of Tonga. He grew up with nothing. It's still a kingdom, right? So they have their king. I remember him saying when he got to the United States how his mind was just open, in all areas. He was just open, to culture, open to business, entrepreneurship. Like that's just something that they don't have in Tonga when you are living under, a kingdom. You're living in certain, stuff. So he developed way at like a really quick pace, especially where he was rubbing shoulders with multimillionaires. He was flying all around the world representing the United States playing rugby. They had to coach them how to present themselves, how to do interviews, So he went through a huge growth process with himself. And that, for an example of how to optimize your business, he wasn't at that level yet. And so I think that's where me and my generation of my siblings, that's where we can take that next step of understanding.
Sure.
And so
that's so cool that he was able to come from a foreign country, come to America, learn new culture, new tons of new things. I was just listening to an interview with it was Enes Kanter. He's a pro basketball player, and he came from Turkey, and one of his teammates tweeted out something that was against the president, and Enes Kanter was like, dude, what are you doing? Like they're probably gonna come in here tomorrow and drag you away. And his teammate's like, no, this is America. That doesn't happen here. And he's like, what? Because in Turkey, if anybody said something against the president, boom, you're taken out the next day and you're never heard of again.
Yeah, and Enes Kanter eventually changed his last name to Freedom. So
Did he?
Enes Kanter Freedom. And it's the point where when you come from a different country, especially, and you come and experience the freedoms. I mean, we spit that word out a lot, but we don't understand the freedoms that it has.
Yeah.
So it eventually costed his NBA career, him speaking out about the issues so much that, he got fired.
Yeah.
He's out of the NBA now, and he's a freedom rallying, someone that goes around and talks about that kind of stuff and tries to wake up the American people. So it's really fortunate. And that's how my dad was too.
Yeah.
You know, he never became a citizen, but
Mm.
he loved America so much. Why he never became, I don't know. I know that it was towards the end of his life. He was wanting to do it. He was wanting to become a citizen. But it's those type of people that also show, hey, we actually super privileged. So it was nice to grow up with that perspective as well. Like, hey, we have so much freedom and opportunity, right? So like, it's not just about politics. Like, I'm not trying to bring that up, but it really does show to entrepreneurs you can't have entrepreneurship if you don't have capitalism, right? You can't be an entrepreneur if you're in a communist regime that tries to shut everything down, or a very fascist one where everything's controlled by the government. So
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I was just talking with Jessica, my wife, about kind of how all these different things are connected. So we can't just like you said, you can't talk about entrepreneurship without talking about capitalism. And I was just listening to George Washington's farewell address in like 1791 or something like that. It was 10 years after the Constitution had been created, and he was saying, he's like, we cannot have a free government without morality, and we
mhm,
cannot have morality without religion.
yeah,
Those aren't my words. Those are George Washington's words of saying you can't have freedom. You can't have basically free politics without morality. You can't have morality without religion. And so all these different things are interconnected. And so to
yep,
leave out politics and just say, oh yeah, you can do that under socialism or communism, it doesn't work. And the sad part about Enes Kanter's story is that um, he actually ended up talking about China and how they were putting people in slave camps, and then he was kicked out. He was reprimanded for it, and he thought that he's like, oh, now I'm in America. That doesn't happen, but it ended up happening to him.
yeah. No, the more I've looked into the Cold War and how it was an ideology war, as well as obviously nukes and things like that. But at the root of it is the spreading of your ideology, right? And the more I've looked into it, the more I realized that that war never ended. It's still at hot pursuit within the United States today. The efforts of the ideology war. So,
Yep. And same thing with the Civil War. We were watching one of Dinesh D'Souza's documentaries. Was it
mhm.
that? It could have been something else, but um, basically, it got to the point where the Southerners wanted to bring aristocracy, meaning having
Mm.
lords and ladies. They wanted to bring that back to America. And they were going to Europe, being educated in France, in Germany, and bringing that ideology back. They're like, maybe we could be lords and ladies here in the South. And so what they started doing was not only were they enslaving black people, but they were also started to enslave everyone, and
Yep.
they wanted to completely enslave everyone. That's when Abraham Lincoln's like, all right, we've drawn the line. We're not going to continue this slavery because that's what it ultimately is. And then they fought it. And so it's always this back and forth of people that want to control other people and people that want freedom, which goes into capitalism and entrepreneurship. And thank goodness, at least right now, we have some degree of freedom to practice
Yep.
entrepreneurship.
Yep. No, that's kind of what it's at. I mean, America, every country has its faults, every country has its, things going on, but essentially we are blessed to live here in America, still has abundance of opportunity and freedom. So,
hmm So how did that lead to you getting into entrepreneurship yourself? Like when was that first business? Was it St. Jeezy or was it something before that point?
Well, the reason why I brought up the sports was
Gotcha.
because that was such a big part of my life. I that's what I did 24/7.
Yeah.
Um, and my dad, that's what he also did 24/7.
Mm.
You know, he was out there with us in the fields. He was out there on the hills, forcing us to run. Um, and that part of that could have been also why it was a little bit difficult to spend time in the business, sector, because literally 24/7 his thoughts were on me and my brothers and siblings and how to help them. Because he saw it as an investment for my sister. He got her to go play at a really prestigious college, Gonzaga University. He got a $250,000 scholarship. So, it was an investment to get her, to get to a scholarship there. And that's the idea with me and my siblings, was to go and get a good degree, and focus on school once we kind of land ourselves in a good college.
Yeah.
But I think the era of colleges kind of shifted. I mean, he grew up, especially in Tonga, his dad was a principal. So he never wanted to do any school, and he only wanted to do rugby. His dad was like, screw rugby, you're doing school. And he never really did well in school. But then towards the end of his life, he grew up and realized the importance of education, and he looked, at colleges, certain colleges prestigious and getting in there and doing well. But I think, today's day and age, college has kind of taken a shift in the value of an education. And it depends obviously on the route. If you need specialized skills like a doctor or things like that, obviously those are vital. But, business admin, going into entrepreneurship, different things like that, where it's like is the value of the college education as much as experience. I don't know. So he so what was the original question?
How did you get into entrepreneurship? But you were talking about sports.
Yep. Now, sports was always to me that route to education, a better education.
Gotcha.
I was a diehard in that. I believed it. I that was what I strived for, and I remember towards the end of my high school career, I wanted money. I was like, I'm sick and tired of working free, bro. Riding gas on empty, begging for money all the time. I want some money. I want to go and work, and I want to go and start a business. I felt like I had seen my parents, this entrepreneurial spirit, and I was like, yeah, like I want to go and work for myself and do things like that. And I think my dad must have seen, me have this, go through what is very common, where you get excited and you never follow through with the idea.
Yeah.
And I'm sure because he must have had a reason, because when I brought up when I was going to go and wash trash cans in high school, he basically was like, dude, I know exactly where it's going to end up. It's going to end up you getting all the equipment and never going door to door and actually following through it and building up a clientele. From what he saw, he never saw me with the, I didn't have that drive yet. That really, really bothered me.
How old were you? How old were you then?
17, something like that.
But that's strange, because you had fallen through with sports and football, and you were starting quarterback, and like you had followed through on the sports end. So why wouldn't that translate over into business?
I don't know. I think as a parent, you can see things that you as a teenage, kid probably don't realize. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that you probably saw some things that, maybe I wanted to do things in the past. And when it comes to money, I don't know. I'm not sure, but I'm glad he said it. He was like, I know where it's leading. You're not going to follow through. This is not going to happen. And that really bothered me. It still is one of the festering emotions in me that is that constant reminder. Hey, don't be a pansy and follow through. Go and do what you say you were going to do. But I ended up still just working. But then, then he was, I think maybe it was, I don't know, afterwards he was like, come work for me and I'll start paying you. So I don't know if it was his way to push me that direction. Not sure. I will give him the benefit of the doubt that he had some foresight or, understanding. But I worked for him, and then I went on my mission. I went to South Africa. And when you're out there, you're just trying to serve the Lord. You put your efforts into serving people and the gospel. And also when you go to another country, you just are awakened. You're just realizing, hey, this is a completely different style of life, different people. You're awakened to, amazing things. And also, hey, this place has some issues, and, back home has a lot of opportunity. And I don't know, you just have a different perspective. So when I came home, I was to go, I went to Utah State. I had a scholarship, not a huge prestigious scholarship, to a local place here at Dixie State. And, I just felt like I could play at a higher level than even Utah State. So I went to Utah State and to play sports. And they told me that they're not looking. I didn't even contact the coach. He was just like, hey, I'm showing up. Like, when's your walk on? I'm going to come. I think I'm better than, the players you have here. So, like, well, we have 7 quarterbacks. We don't really need another one. Like, I don't really care. I'm here to take a spot.
Yeah. Is that really how the conversation went?
Sorry?
Is that really how the conversation went? Were you really that forward with them?
No, it was a little bit softer. He said, we have 7 quarterbacks and we don't need another quarterback. And I said, well, I believe that I'm better than your quarterbacks. No, I believe that how did I say it? It was some way of saying, I think I can start,
Gotcha.
And, he's like, well, we can't technically, we can't, with football, you have time periods where the coaches cannot be on the field and doing routes and, conducting, organized plays with the football or things like that. And he's like, well, it's that time period. We can't do, route throwing. We can't do this stuff. And I was like, well, I'm a quarterback, I believe I'm good enough. And so, I'm here. I've enrolled and I'm here. And so it was the day before he reached out to me and was like, before the tryouts, and he was like, hey, we're going to leave a bag of footballs out on the field for you. And all of the coaches are going to step off the turf there's, the entryway they had this building where it was an indoor turf practice building. Yeah. So we were just going to step off into the entryway, not go outside because it's freezing cold. It's in Logan. They're just outside. They're just off the field. And then you can conduct anything you want from there. And I was like, perfect. That's all I need. And after the tryout, I basically rounded up everyone and said, hey, this bag of football is for us. If you're a wide receiver, if you're this, I'm a quarterback, you want to stick around and show the coaches what you got, then stick around with me. And it was basically, I would say like 95% of people stayed. That was on the tryout thing. There was only like the linemen that did. So you had linebackers, you had DBs, you had wide receivers, all of them stayed. I organized them all up. One other dude was like, hey, actually, I've played quarterback. I'd like to, do too. So both of us, both were doing quarterback. We put 4 lines together and, we switched and we threw to both sides. And it went really well to where afterwards the quarterback coach came up to me and was like, I'm very impressed. Like you did really well. We're not looking for a quarterback, but, you really impressed me. And then they gave me the offer to have to wait a whole year. So I was there in the spring, like you have to wait till spring with the new, input of recruits. And I was like, no ways, you take me now or I'm out kind of a deal. And then, so I was like, all right. And then Snow College was saying, hey, come to us and then we'll throw you to another school. Because Snow College is a funnel school where you can go play junior level and then they'll throw you. That's their whole, the whole purpose of them is to put you in a better program.
Yeah.
So then I was like, all right, peace out, Logan left. But during the Logan, okay, sorry, I'm talking about football, but it's important here is during that time, of waiting, to decide what to do. I had a whole semester, right? So after I was like, no, I'm going to leave, I still had a whole semester. So that's where I was like, hey, like, let's start up a little way to make money. I'm broke, and I don't want to suck my blood with the whole. What is that?
The plasma.
So plasma. Yeah. Yeah, did it a few times just to get the initial money, and then I was done. I was like, okay, let's figure out a different way to make money.
Yeah.
And we were bantering off ideas with our roommates on how to make money, and then we talked about this game that is done in southern Utah where they hide a rock and then they release clues, and people have to follow the clues, and they have to pay to play. And when they find the rock, they get like X amount of money. So it was huge. It was like we were talking about it with a lot of excitement in our apartment. And I was like, all right, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's bring it up here. We'll do it for $2,000. People will search for the rock for $2,000, and they pay $20, $15, $20 to play. And we'll make this much money into this, and it'll be just fun and experience. Anyways, the next day, the excitement was silent. No one was talking about it. And I was like, and then there was that thought in my mind from my dad, of, I know where this is going to go. You're going to do it. You're not going to follow through. So the idea of follow through was just like pushing on me. And at the same time, I was taking some business classes. And what I liked at Utah State, they have a business building and big old letters that says, dare to do mighty things. And so with those two things, I was like, okay, dare to do mighty things. It's dare because you freaking are scared. You're nervous of failure. You're nervous of all kinds of things. And to me, at the moment, that was a mighty thing. So I was like, all right, I'm going to dare to do mighty things, and I'm going to follow through. So I forced my brother, my roommates, flyer with me. They were embarrassed. I was embarrassed too. I mean, I was like, telling people, hey, have you heard about this thing? They're like, sounds like a scam. I'm like, oh, freak. So, that was a huge learning experience for me within that semester. But then it actually succeeded, not money-wise. Not money-wise, but we were able to get so many people on the campus going crazy for it. I mean, they were ripping up. There's a there's a graveyard next to Utah State. They were moving headstones. They were doing all kinds of wacky stuff, not only there, but on the campus. They were moving statues in the art building. They were moving art in the library. And we had so many professors, so many, people coming out and being like, this needs to stop. And, we had so many people. We had tons of people play. We had stories of, the ambassadors where they canceled all their plans, and all the ambassadors got together and wrote up on the board, where is the Aggie Rock? People that were working at Walmart were pulling, their board meetings are five minutes of business, and then it shut down and was a 45-minute discussion of where the Aggie Rock is with their employees. And it was the first time where people played and they didn't understand that every single person needed to pay. So we had hundreds and hundreds of people play, but not a lot of people paid. But it was a really good experience. The first business experience that I had at the moment, and the experience of following through, daring to do mighty things. So that's kind of when the business aspect of it got into play. And I started to have more of an interest towards business than football. Because then my football career, it led me in a different direction. Ultimately, just me, being like, no, I actually really enjoy business. I'm throwing up the cleats. I have a lot of time. Let's get into it. So
that's really interesting. I have like a million questions for you. One of them is how, because you're amazing at marketing. That we partnered up several times, and you're really good at just marketing and getting people aware of the ideas. How did you do that with Aggie Rock? One day you said everybody was talking about it, and then the next day, what was that transition of like getting everybody to start talking about it? Was the flyers? What was it?
Well, I just started to sit back and think through, like, okay, how do I get people jazzed out about an idea? And I was thinking about it, and and I just realized I have to get the influential people, excited about it. I have to get people with, credibility. That was one thing where people thought this was a massive scam. So I just started to unravel my problems backwards. And okay, people think this is a scam. Okay, how do we figure that out? How, people are not really interested. How do we figure that out? And I wouldn't say I'm an amazing marketer. I think I'm great at problem solving. And that stems from those hot, long days of listening to my dad, and having him stimulate thought process and problem solving. And so it's kind of taking the problems and the issues and working back from them. I just realized, hey, you know what? I need to get, and it might be common sense to other people, but this is just the process that I was going through. Where I realized, okay, I need to get people with credibility. I need to get people with influence. I need to get them jazzed. So I identified those people. And then I started to convince them to play, get them excited, at a personal level. After getting a few of them excited and I was like, can you post this? And it was very organic measures. I got, football players involved. I got basketball players involved, all the ambassadors and then just popular people, pretty women, all of that, just playing towards, what as humans we kind of look for. And the Pretty Women was, like all the guys. There was a lot of influential guys that I wanted to get to, participate. So I had to get, them for a reason. I had to, get some pretty girls on the roster in a sense. And then it just built credibility, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. But it was just realizing, okay, how do I stimulate emotion? And stimulating the emotion, these are the ways to do it, and just doing it in a very organic way.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. I wonder. I have some thoughts with your upcoming business. What if you did something similar? But we should talk about that in a second. One of my other questions is, I was talking with a friend recently, and he's looking at starting up a business. He's working a 9 to 5 right now, and he has quite a bit of money saved up, and he wants to start his own thing, his own business, but he has a lot of fear. I think it's a lot of fear of failure. Um, I I don't think that I've ever really experienced that much. So that's not one. I have other weaknesses. I have lots of weaknesses, but that
Yeah.
isn't one of them. So when somebody says like, "How do I overcome that?" I'm like, "You just do it. Like, what's there to overcome?" I don't understand that. What advice would you give to somebody like that? I'm sure there are a lot of people that might be watching this interview even. They're like, "I want to do something big, but I just have that fear of failure, fear of starting." What advice would you give them?
Yeah, that's tough. I would say majority of the people have that. I have that. I still have that actually. I have to constantly battle that. And the issue with it is people might not see that it's a fear of failure because then they're like, I don't fear failing. I just thought through all of the problems why not to do it. And it's like, well, if you look at the root of it, maybe you're just afraid of every single problem. If you look too far in the horizon, you see all the problems, you never start, you never do it. And you're like, I'm not afraid to fail. It's just not going to work. And it's like, no, you're afraid to solve the problem. You're afraid because you
Uh,
might fail at solving the problem.
okay.
So I think my advice is look at it. There is benefits to looking at it one problem at a time. And of course, you're going to have to look a little bit further and, the problems that come after it, looking at 3 to 4 problems. But it's finding that healthy balance of not looking at all the problems and all the issues and all the things that can go wrong. Because it is the hardest thing to get through. But I'm lucky enough that my dad, he was like, yeah, you're not going to follow through. And I was like, screw you, I'm going to follow through.
I've
So,
heard that from so many people of like these super successful people are like, my parents said I would never make it. My dad said I just like your dad was like, yeah, you're not gonna follow through. And I wondered like maybe with some of them, like they actually mean it, but then maybe with some of them, they're like, it's reverse psychology
Yeah.
somehow, and it's like trying to just push you, back
Yeah.
you down.
Well, I think that because my dad was like wicked at mind games.
Okay.
So if I was to place it anywhere, it would have been, a way of like just pushing the button and just like letting it seep, and
Yeah, yeah,
he would do that with a lot of things. So like, I would acknowledge that that's probably what it was. And
gotcha.
um, but yeah, I was lucky that someone told me straight how it is. And I think sometimes that also helps, if they have a friend being like, hey, you're just afraid, like let it just like deep in, it's like, well, I'm not afraid, So I think it does take, and if you're not going to do that alone, I mean, if you're not going to have someone do that to you, then how do you do it alone? I think it's tough. I think it's just practice. What I've noticed too is practice at the small things. What am I afraid of on a small level? Maybe you see an old time friend and you don't want to say hi, right?
Mm.
I was extremely introverted growing up. My dad would like be so on me, like you be the first one to say hi, and I'd be like crying inside, like no. But I think it's as we practice little, victories like that, we can then take on bigger feats.
Yeah.
Anything that makes us nervous, like one that it will take me probably will be the last feat that I will do is singing in front of people. I'd rather start businesses than that. That will come. It will come.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, some other things, pushing yourself. I think that's really where it is. You got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You got to push yourself in different ways. So I think that's the best advice that I would say for someone in that circumstance is look for opportunities to overcome fear in all aspects of life. And then the more that you do that, the less fear you'll have for, something slightly bigger, slightly more challenging.
Oh, gotcha. From my well, funny story first. I was listening to this book called Green Lights. It's by Matthew McConaughey. I really liked like the first half of it where he was growing up, and then the second half I didn't really like that much. But there's this story of him and his brother. They were growing up, and their dad was always like super rough and mean and like very harsh with them. Well, this one time, the brother was like 16, and he just got growing up, they would go and they would roll. What was it called? It was like roll pipe is what they called it, and basically it was like they would steal pipe from these other businesses, and I don't even know what they would do with it. I don't know if it was like a competitive business or something. The dad had like a small business or something, but they would like roll pipe and like go and steal somebody else's and then bring it back and use it for something. Well, and they would do that all growing up. Okay, they're like out in the backwoods in Texas, and and so what ended up happening? The brother was like 16, and he got a job with one of the big guys in town, big rigs in town, and the dad was like, "Hey, son, why don't we go roll pipe tonight?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, where are you thinking?" He's like, "Old John's house," and that was the guy he was working with. And he's like, I can't do that, Dad. I'll go anywhere else. And he's like, oh, what? You're too much of a man to roll pipe with your old man? And he's like, no, that's not it. He's like, all right, let's go out here. And the dad is like this massive guy. And he's like 6'4", massive guy, takes off his shirt, and he's all drunk, takes off his shirt. And he's like, all right, you don't think you're too good for your old man? All right. Fight me right here. And he's like, what? He's like, what? I'm not going to fight. He's like, yes, you are. Let's do this right now. And I'm reading this book like, what on earth is going on? And the son and the dad like comes over and like takes a swing and knocks the kid to the ground. He's like 16 and he's like tiny too, and knocks him to the ground. He's like, "Get up, face your old man." And the kid picks up this 2x4 and he's like, "Dad, don't come near me." He's like, "Oh, come at me, son." And the dad goes at him and he nails him across his face, and he falls to the ground. The dad falls to the ground, and he's like kind of looking around, gets up again. He's like, "I don't want to do this to you, Dad, but I'll hit you again if you come at me." He's like, "Come on, hit me again." And he comes at him, nails him again, and he knocks him out. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, I killed my old man." And so he goes over there, and and he's out for like 2 or 3 minutes. Finally, the dad comes to, and he's crying, and he's like, "That's my boy. Good job. That's my son." And Matthew McConaughey was standing right there. He was like 10, and he's like, "I never, from that day forward, his brother and his dad were on the same level." He had earned that respect with his dad, kind of in a crazy way, but he had earned that respect with his dad. And he said from that day forward, they were like equals. And he never told his son what to do again. And so in a crazy way, I think parents, I think good leaders do crazy things like that in order to bring the person they're leading to the next level.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
It's a pretty crazy story.
That's cool.
I wanted to ask you about with sports, with your mission, and maybe more sports than your mission. But you have to do with sports. You have to do you have to work with people a lot. There's a lot of teamwork. You have coaches that are above you. You have your own teammates that are kind of on your same level, and then maybe you have the younger players that are underneath you. You're training up. What were some of those lessons that you learned about teamwork?
Oh man, there's a lot when it comes to sports. I was blessed with an amazing high school team. It was really fun. It was quite the experience. But
Because you guys won, was it 3? Was it 2? What? One.
no,
It was at least one state championship.
yeah, no. When I was a sophomore, we won. I had no part in that. I was just the bad
Okay. Okay.
guy. And I just barely had moved to that school. And
Okay.
then my junior year, I was starting, and there were some lessons between my junior and senior year that was very valuable. Um, Junior year, we had the best football team that has ever come through that high school, and great talent in so many different areas. I was like the least of the talent. Everyone else was like great talent,
No.
and I was new. But what I observed was that everyone was in their own groups. There wasn't a lot of unity. And that came to our downfall. We had won everyone, and we lost to someone that we blew out of the water in the semifinals due to us just coming at each other's throats and falling when it was most critical to perform. So not performing under that extreme pressure. What I noticed from my senior year was we were like, all of us were average players. And we didn't really have we didn't have any superstars. And we actually started off the season horrible. We were just losing and losing and losing. And then our coaches slapped us, took us leaders and slapped us in the face and said, "You guys, Ammon, blank, blank, you guys, we thought you guys would be good. You suck. You, we thought you guys would be good. You guys, we thought you guys would suck, but you guys are doing good." It's like, overall, you suck, you know, and like basically it was more than just you suck. It was really, you know, they called me on the spot, you know, to my center, Jackson Davis, was like, you know, what do you know about Jackson? How many siblings does he have in his family? And I was like, I don't know, you know, and that bond was supposed to be the closest bond. And he asked the same to my center. He's like, Jackson, how many siblings does Ammon have in his family? He's like, I don't know. And it was just a really, you know, show tell sign of
Interesting.
there is no unity in this right now. And we did that with our leaders, and you know, it was a really moving experience, more being beyond just that one time event. I mean, he then had us set goals with each other to be more unified. We had, you know, we had to be vulnerable. We had to share stories with each other. We set extreme mandates, like every single day we eat lunch together. Every single, you know, home game, we spend time together. We go to you know, we sleep out on the field together. You know, so we created a long list of things that we did, and then as a leader, we then went and implemented it. We actually implemented with our team. We called an emergency meeting. We went, you know, we had a fun time. Had an emergency meeting on Sunday to gather together without the coaches, just the players, and we went through the same process the coaches did to us. Slapped everyone in the face, showing, hey, we are not unified. So these are the ways that we're going to become unified. And we had a big old long list. And then we just, from that point forward, we never lost a game. We barely won the next game, We started winning fairly. So it just went on a roll to where we couldn't be stopped. And even our quarterfinal game, we were facing the number 1 seed who was undefeated. And we were playing away. And there was a point where I had gotten injured. I was out for a little second. You know, we weren't doing good before, and I was out. And then we went to 41-7. That was the score, with less than a minute until the fourth quarter.
Wow!
And we had to come back around, and we did. We scored 41 unanswered points under 4 minutes, and it was just an amazing. I mean, even the TV crew had gone home. You know, a lot of our stand had left. Everyone listening on the radio had turned off the radio. It was so painful to hear that we were going to lose. But you know, it was just never. But that's the thing, is we had been building up, and we've been increasing our unity, and to where when the time mattered the most, and we were under the most amount of pressure, we performed. And it solely was due to that, you know, connection. I mean, I remember the first time that I realized, well, I mean, the whole time I was like, listen, this is not our last game. I just mentally did not accept it. And pretty soon it was the same attitude with all of the leaders. I said, we're not losing. You know, it was just like a disconnection of reality of like, hey, we've got, you know, 41 points to make up.
Yeah.
Anyways,
yeah.
It was where I handed the ball off to my running back, and he went and hit into a wall of defenders. And then more people started jumping, and then pretty soon I saw my entire team. I started pushing our entire team. I was looking around, I was like, my entire team was pushing with me, and we pushed that kid for another 15 yards and got first down. At that moment, I was like, we're winning. And then we scored. It was this idea of unity. You know, and it's something interesting that I've been thinking about too, is because someone had showed me a video of these horses that pull. What are they called? Those big old horses that pull thing.
Cala something.
Yeah. And so they do competitions where they'll yoke them together, right? And like a single horse can only pull 4,000 pounds, but if you put them together, you'd think that they would do 8,000 pounds. But no, they do 16,000 pounds. So it's just a mind-boggling thing. And then if you train them together, you know, they spend time together. If they spend that, if they work out together, they spend that time to unify together, then they don't pull 16, they can pull up to 32,000 pounds. Another mind-boggling. And then the record was set by two brothers that grew up together, and they pulled 55,000 pounds. Right? So it's this concept of being yoked together whether it was with you, your partner, your family, your wife or husband. In this case, it was our team. Like we were very yoked together, and our output was so much greater than what anyone would have given credit, just as much as, two horses being looked upon to only pull 8,000 pounds. So yeah, we did. We were an average team. We overcome quite a bit. We had a really cool story. We ended up going to win state. That was it was fun. I mean, it's high school football, but there's a lot of important lessons that I've learned in my childhood, high school, that are helping me today.
For sure,
we can help some.
I mean,
still pretty new in this.
I think Disney could make Remember the Titans Part 2 with your guys' story. That's exactly what happened, right? The coaches went to him and said, "We're gonna do 3 days until everybody knows each other here and becomes like brothers." And then they come back and they're all singing. They're singing songs together and they're really tight, right?
Yeah, no, it definitely was that kind of a feel, and it was. Yeah, I definitely have some strong memories, some fond memories of that. So
yeah, so that was kind of like your introduction into entrepreneurship, working with other people to get wins.
Yeah,
and then second was the Aggie Rock. Is that what you called it, or what did you call it?
The Aggie Rock.
Aggie Rock. Okay. Aggie Rock. Learning a lot of marketing skills. Then you end up coming down to St. George, and is that when you started St. Jeezy, or what was?
Yeah, so I came back. I just felt, that it was the right move to do. I was like, maybe football isn't, not the direction. I just feel heavily. There's a few times in my life where I felt so strong about something. Coming back home was one of the strongest, and I was like, all right, well, I have no idea if I'm going to play football or what. So I came back home and dabbled here in the area, and just realized, football wasn't for me, and threw my cleats up, and I had tons and tons of time. But while I was down here, I was just looking to have fun. I was, at the same time, I was feeling kind of lost. I was like, okay, what the heck am I going to do? Like, I know for a fact I'm supposed to be here, but other than that, I'm lost. So there's a little time where I felt a little bit lost.
Yeah.
But also during that time, I was like, I'm going to have some fun. I'm going to, I loved to, get out indoors and do fun, wholesome activities, not just go and play video games, or, other people thought you could only have fun while drinking and staring at each other in the eyes. So I'm like, nah, we're going to have a lot of fun. And people would always say, this would be super fun to do. And it was always an irritant of mine where people never followed through. Since I've been focusing on following through so much, now it's become kind of like a little bit irritating when someone has an awesome idea and then never follows through. And I think it's because I started to realize how common that was with not only fun things to do, business ideas, but just life in general of not following through with stuff. So I started doing fun things. People were saying we should do a projected movie on the beach of this lake that's nearby, and do like a float in and or hang out and do this and that. And I was like, all right, and I kind of just took it upon myself to actually do those things.
You were kind of the leader who led out, and you're like, let me go ahead and set up how we would do this movie and projection and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because it would never have happened if someone just didn't do it. So I was like, all right, we're just gonna do it. Yeah. So that's the way that it just started, was just having not fun, but just wanting to follow through, practicing on following through. And I think that's where it goes to also with where I had suggested people, tackling one thing. I mean, overcoming the fear of failure is just doing something and following through, kind of going beyond that fear. So I think it was the same thing. I was practicing like, hey, I've got to follow through. And we started, having a lot of fun. People started to join. A friend of mine created an Instagram page for people to follow along with the activities that I was doing. And
who was that?
Oh, it was Shabri.
It was Shabri. Okay.
So she was like, hey, we should do this. Let's make a platform where people can see the fun stuff we're doing,
Yeah.
called Summer Social 2019. And so she started that, and I continued to start, plan the events, do the events. And because then at that point, I was like, hey, it was at that point where I was like, well, we have, hundreds of people coming out, close to 1,000 people coming out. Let's do fun. Let's do more fun things. Let's do this. Let's, and that costs money. And then I was like, well, okay, maybe I do want to, develop some business skills here. Maybe it's an opportunity for me.
Yeah.
After I threw in my cleats, I was like, full force, let's do it. I'm more interested in learning some of these skills. I can learn business skills. I can learn marketing skills. That's really the concept, was develop further some of those marketing tactics, strategies, and skills that I had dabbled just for a brief moment with the Aggie Rock. So that's where St. Jeezy events really started to be a thing. So our town that we live in is St. George, and the nickname is St. Jeezy. So that's why I named it St. Jeezy. Or with Chabris, we developed it, and then I kind of changed the brand, to St. Jeezy, created a logo, and me and Chabris started doing this venture together, where we just saw it as an opportunity to learn business. So we would do events. We would, So that's basically all we did, was events. The idea was creative, fun, wholesome events. And so we did everything from dance parties to even things on the beach, or tubing down the river, or just kind of fun stuff like that.
Yeah, that's so cool. So it kind of just naturally, like, there was a problem in your own life that you're like, I wanna go and do fun things, and so you start doing it, and other friends were like, hey, I want to come along, and so then it naturally just started progressing until you're like, wait a second, there might be a business model here, a way to make money.
Yeah, well, it wasn't just natural. I mean, I wanted people to come.
Okay.
So the same techniques that I was doing up in, started to realize up in the Aggie Rock, Logan,
Okay.
I started doing here. I took
Okay.
a lot of it, it took a whole day's worth of personally inviting people, the influential, getting them to post, and, turning, like, our first event, we had, a few hundred people. So it never was like this 15 member group and slowly growing. It was like, hey, like, let's do this fun. Let's bring a ton of people. So what I did with the Aggie Rock, I did here, and immediately started with, a few hundred people.
Okay. So using that same marketing tactic.
Yeah. And then it got to the point where, hey, I can try to use this and further develop it, make money, learn how to, make money, learn some of the basic business, principles and foundational things to learn. So that's not easy as.
Okay. And you did that for what, 2.5, 3 years?
Yeah, probably.
And so when I kind of know the story from here, but why don't you go ahead and explain a little bit of where the business went from there, and then when you decided that it wasn't going to be the best going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I always saw it as my, step one, learn some of the basic business type of business.
Oh wait, quick question. So you're saying purpose, when you very first started, one, you wanted to learn. What were some of those other things that maybe right the beginning, like, you're like, here are my 3 goals with starting. Did you have that? Because one of them was to learn.
Yeah. So when I started, it was solely to learn business and marketing skills.
Okay.
And what encompasses in business skills is making a profit. I mean,
sure.
You're not learning business skills, you're not making a profit, right? So it was learn business skills and marketing.
Okay.
Business management skills and marketing. Because I was with my, I was in college for a marketing degree. So I thought I would follow through with my marketing degree, and this as an experience, as an opportunity to get real life experience instead of just book experience.
For sure.
Yeah, those are the two goals.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Did you have, you said a part of that was making a profit. Um, did you ever have like a number that you're like, by the end of 2019, I want to make this much money, or 2020, I want to make? Did you have?
No,
Okay.
yeah, because at this time I was in college. I was already living bum broke, and I was having fun, and I was like, I want, and the idea was to finish college. So I was like, as long as I can get, I would like to pay for college, right? Pay for my schooling, but it was never like an official business sit down. And so those are all things that I've learned
That
and
you've learned.
continued.
Yeah, for sure.
At the beginning, it was, man, this is something that I can learn because my first priority is college.
Gotcha.
And it got to the point at my crossroads, and I was like, is college my priority? Is this like really worth my time?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
No, that everybody, I'm sure most people have been there. I was there when I first started my first business. I didn't have a goal. I was just going out there and just doing it. So it totally makes sense.
Yeah. So, your question before that.
Yeah. So where did St. Jeezy go from? You said it was starting to ramp up, and you're getting 1,000 people out. Where did it go? And then when did you decide that it wasn't going to be the best going forward?
So one of the, we had some events, some smaller events. We had our first paid event, and then quite quickly after that, I found a venue up in Cedar, and it's what I call the Landslide Festival venue. It's this redneck water park. It's a giant water slide that throws you like 20 feet high into the water, into like a man-made pond. So I found that. It was just barely built. And that's all I found. I was like, okay, I want to do an event here. So that was a whole whirlwind and an experience in itself within, I think, like a month and a half, trying to get the legal set up, get the finances set up. It was the first time I had to pay, a significant amount of money for a venue, and all of that, and then the stress of making sure enough people came to break even. So it was after that which I saw the vision of at least the direction that I wanted to go. I saw St. Jeezy as doing small events, and then this Landslide Festival, I saw it as something that could be huge and a standalone festival, and so I had that vision after the very first time doing it. The second time did it, it was a huge success. We had a lot of people come out. We made, it was the first time I had personally on an event, bring in close to 30 grand for the event. And so it just, was a testament to my vision of what the Landslide Festival could be. So towards the very beginning of St. Jeezy, I already had this idea of leaving St. Jeezy and focusing on other stuff. I was like, in St. Jeezy, I always played around for a long time after that. How do I optimize St. Jeezy? I didn't have a lot of skills, or I developed a lot of skills within, a year to realize that, if I was to do it again, I should have done it this way and done that way and all of these things. And the whole thing was kind of a mess, but it took me a little while to eventually give up on it and move on, because it provided some sort of stability to provide for my family.
Gotcha.
Just as much as like a 9-to-5 job would be towards someone who's trying to start their own business. I would see very similar, hesitation to leave that as I did with this smaller St. Jeezy business, because it provided that stability for my family. So just recently is when I've been officially able to to move it onto someone else. I mean, for a time period, I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe we lock in this venue and then we can create, a very set schedule and set, you know, expense list and, be able to make up to a optimized profit business. The venue and everything kind of came downhill. And so I'm like, okay, it's officially time for me to just, move on from that and move on to my current direction and some of the other directions that I've been wanting to go. And I'm still learning, basic business principles, but I feel like now this is round two for me to be able to get, to step one is what I say, like where you're at. Step one, you get to where you have a business already, all automated, self-automated, and allows you the freedom to invest your time and money into other areas. So
yeah, no, that totally, it makes a lot of sense. Everybody has to go through kind of the different levels of learning, right? If you talked about, like, if I was going to start all over again, I would have done things differently. Looking at St. Jeezy now that you can step back, it's not yours, it's not so personal, and all that stuff. Is there a viable business model? What would you have done differently? Or would you have just passed it off to the side completely if you were to do it over again with your knowledge now?
Well, I think there's two things at play. One, the city really doesn't like events, so that's a huge hurdle, huge battle to fight. Two is there's not a lot of venues because of that fact. There's not a lot of venues. Those are two main arteries within an event company. I think that it is viable in, maybe a year or two to get over those in a healthy way and, a reliable, steady way. We were always really good with the city, but we're always walking on eggshells. We had a really good relationship. I think that more venues will be available. Every single year there's one or two more. So I think it would be a really good business, to start off with once there's a venue in the right city or the right area that allows it. So gotcha. I thought that had happened, but it didn't. So I think if the current owner right now holds on to it for this next year, I think there will be an option. But yeah, once you have those two things, I think it's a lot easier. When you have your solid ground, you can start, okay, I have a location, designated location,
yeah,
which can set your expense. You can plan on, these are my expenses, this is this. Now I can just focus on the operation, marketing, set up your legal part of it. And so, yeah, so I think it does have merit and viability. I think it just needs a little bit of time.
So yeah, that makes sense with the venue. So let's say you got a venue. Why, or I guess let's say you get a venue. The current owner gets a venue. And what, you would get like 1,000 people there for an event? Or
no, you turn it into kind of like, and I hate to say it, but like a club.
Okay.
But that's kind of what we're doing right now with dance parties. It's a wholesome club. I mean, it's not like, it's just, you think back of your high school prom, and you're dancing, you're DJing. Well, at least we had a really fun group. So all of us were just like moshing and dancing and stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't horrible. That's kind of what we did,
okay.
College level.
Okay.
And so I would try to do that just a consistent level. But when I would say a club, I say it because it includes memberships.
Gotcha.
So that's the direction I would have it. I would have like an event every single month, and you can be a member. So I'd push it to more of a membership feel. And that's where like the club, right? The Heart of Country swing, club kind of feel. So
gotcha. Would you do it more often? Do it weekly or even a couple times a week? Because I mean, in Vegas, they're doing it every single night. They have
Yeah,
their clubs running, or do you not? What
I
do you?
think you gotta fill out your market.
Okay.
Uh, I think in Vegas, you have hundreds of thousands of people of that demographic that are wanting to. And so I think nightly or weekly or whatever they do it, it makes sense. But where you're in a location where you don't have that much of a demographic pool, I think, yeah, being smart about it and doing it. If you were to do it once a month, I think it'd be still really successful.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you um because the businesses that you've done thus far have been location specific, meaning it's in St. George or it's in Logan, right?
Hmm.
Do you like those kinds of business models, or do you want to try something else where it's online, where it's not specific to a location?
Um, yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. The aspect that I like about online is that you have an endless amount of clientele. You're not restricted to the physical location problem that I just really explained.
Yeah.
It also comes at a cost where it's expensive marketing. But if you can dial it in to where you can project very accurately, like, okay, we spend X amount of dollars and we get X amount back. Yeah, I think if you get to that point and you've developed a team that can do that, that would be ideal.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, location based businesses, I think, just spitballing my first reaction, I think it's really good for your, business one, like the phase one or getting to step one. I think it is good. You got lawn care, you've got all kinds of different services or products or things you can do. Um, but no, I do like where there's more opportunity. Uh, that's where initially, I mean, eventually where I'd like to focus my time on.
Okay. Do you have a preference on like a marketing strategy that you really like? You talked about using influencers, one, or doing maybe more physical like flyers or billboards, and there's online ads. Do you have like a favorite kind of marketing, or does it completely depend on the business?
I think it does depend on the business. When it comes to events and throwing events, I liked old school marketing, flyers, banners, and influencers. Even though you can't track flyers and banners, um, I do believe that I saw more of a success putting my efforts there. Influencers than the paid ads. I mean, there's several events where I just would try, okay, maybe don't paid ads this time. Like, and it would do better, or it would do, I don't think paid ads really do much with a small level business located in a small demographic
Okay.
area. So I think it does depend on the business. Because some of the other business ideas that I have, marketing is completely different. In fact, I think that's the best marketing if you can figure out, the path that people are already walking, and then figure a way to just lay down right in front of their path where they have to use it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's the best thing where you don't. It's really not marketing. It's just you know them needing to use your service.
For sure.
So
It's finding out where they're already going and then
mhm,
going along right with that.
yeah,
Not not an interruption, because there's like interruption marketing where they're like going about their day and then you like pop up in front of them like and then you have to try to sell them, and it's a little more tricky than like, yeah, I have this problem. Oh yeah, we're right here. Well, let's do it.
mhm,
Boom.
yeah.
That makes sense. Moving on to Landslide. So then you found this venue and you're like,
Mhm.
dang, this is freaking awesome. I could see this as being a huge thing, and doing like a once a year type of huge event. Um, where are you? Uh, I want to hear a little bit about your experience working with Russ as a partner. How has it been working with more? I mean, you were working with kind of partners on a smaller scale with St. Jeezy, right?
Mhm.
And then now with Landslide, it's more of your sisters now involved in it. You have Russ, you have you. How has that been working with different partners?
Um, it's been really good. I pull back to that horse analogy really, Paul. I think that if you can develop the skills to work with another person, your output can just be mind-boggling. And the more that you're unified, the more that you're yoked together on certain tasks, issues, projects, and things like that. So I think it's vital to learn that skill, and it hasn't been easy. In fact, it's been quite difficult, but really rewarding. I will say over time with the specific partner, it becomes easier and easier because you start to understand each other. You start to, not only realize, hey, they're skilled in this area. You realize, hey, they're not out there to screw me. So you start to build a lot of trust. So you have a lot of trust in the other person, and that goes a long ways. So, um, my experience with some of my partners have been different. Also, I've had equal partners. I've had partners of lower percentage. I've had partners per project, um, and I would say it's kind of the same in my opinion. Kind of the same. You still have to have that trust. You still have to have that that drive, whether you're the 2%er or you're the 50%er or the 25%. I think what creates it to be a success is everyone is not focused on their individual result, but in the project where with the team, for an example. You're not focused on your individual stats. You're not focused on how many touchdowns you throw or how many touchdowns you run. Or you're focused on the result of the team. Are we winning? Are we progressing to
Gotcha.
state championship? Or something like that. So I think I think the underlining lesson that I would say is developing that unity within partnerships and not being focused on your individual results, percentages, different things like that.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, that's those are some really good lessons because as we've talked about, um, both of us want to get into more of uh, partnerships, working with more people. I'm starting to work with more people, and so that's something that I really want to. You have more experience with than I do, so I want to learn from you there. Um, with Landslide, kind of explain like how it's been because you've done it for is 2 or 3 years that you've done Landslide.
We've done it 3 years, so
Okay,
this was the third year.
yeah. Explain kind of the progression of each year and where you're at now with Landslide.
Yeah. So the first year that we did it, we me and my sister did it all by ourselves, and we brought in a profit. It was like I said, the first time that my one of my events brought in 30 grand. Just not,
That's such a good feeling, isn't it?
it is a good feeling. I mean, it's relatively not a lot, but it was like a good success, a little success. Um, and then people started to want to join the cause, right? It was not only a good feeling because we didn't lose money or break even, but everything like there's the vibe, the energy. There's something about gathering people together and putting on an event that everyone loves, and everyone feels like, hey, this is very wholesome. This is very like the vibe here is very tangible. It's just a really good vibe overall. So I felt like we did a really good job with that, into where people bought on the idea. Partners with whether it be sound and production or um, or eventually Russ, the venue owner. He's the one who sat down and was like, "Hey, I can see where you're going with this. I believe in it. I want to financially fund it." Russ is a very successful individual. He has quite a bit of resources to make this event, the direction that I had seen it going, to the point where he changed the entire scope of the land. We sat down together and we planned. He kind of figured out what we can do here and here. He has a 6-mile UTV course with jumps and berms, and professional people come out and ride it. You have the lake that he had already created with the slide, and we have a bike jump, like what is it, a jump park, a bike park, big old jumps, and we had so that goes on. The camping area, more parking in. So he's put in a lot of time and effort and money into it to change it, because he's fully bought in on the idea, not only the Landslide, but what the venue can be. And that's kind of what we've been doing. Actually, this is his business is now Three Peaks Oasis. That's the venue. And so the idea is to hold some, major concerts, major events there. And so, yeah, that's kind of the turn that the Landslide took. And we got a major partner involved, and he backed it for that next year financially, and he wanted to bring a big artist. So we had essentially 3.5 months before we got the news that let's because we were just going to go a little bit bigger than the previous year, but we're like, no, let's go. And he was like, let's go big, let's do it. That's his mentality, is go big and you work hard for it. And so we did that, and we had some unfortunate circumstances that led that event not to be profitable. But it was a huge learning experience for everyone that was involved. We brought out Jason Derulo to come and perform. Dea also came and performed the day before, so it was a 2-day event. And it was raining. There was a lot of out of our control circumstance that happened to it. There's some internal problems that we were trying to figure out through partnership. Things that we were battling with some internal partners, not between me or Russ or Calcine, but some others. And so there was learning experiences that we went through in that 4.5 months that one person said, you should feel lucky because that's business education at Harvard. And it costed about the same much. But, there was a lot that I learned in that short time period. So that was the second year that we did it. We financially went into the hole. We realized the importance of teamwork, team unity. And so we implemented that the following year. So then we pulled back a little bit on some financials, and we're starting to reevaluate and be able to find where we need to break even, where, how many people we can rely on. And the next year was quite successful. Technically, if you're doing these larger events, we also found out that, plan for 5 years before breaking even is what they say when you're trying to do these large festivals. Wow. Which is not the best business model for a entrepreneur starting his,
so it was great. It was great for Russ because he's in there for the long-term game, but it's hard for a starting entrepreneur.
Yeah. So that's what I'm even starting to realize now, the levels and steps you need to take. I mean, it's very stressful and very hard on me and my family as an entrepreneur going in something like that. Because where does your food come from? So anyways, what was successful for the next year is we were able to pay for, our finances. So we paid for our finances. We still lost a little bit of money, but if we didn't have paid for mine and Calcina's finances, and then we would have broken even. So we considered a break-even year, a whole 3 years before the traditional break-even. But what was really successful out of that year was the unity. We really brought the team together. We had great teamwork from the top down. I mean, from the top down, there was about probably 200 people involved in putting the
Wow.
entire together. So lines of communications were very important. We had, structured leadership all the way down. And so that was a huge success, being able to put that event on. It's a very big event, very intricate, and the systems went nearly perfect. Um, and then the second part of that year was the vibe was back. The first year the vibe was killed because we were in shambles. The second year the vibe was back, and that's the branding. People say vibe, but also it's the brand. The brand's back. It was amazing. We had Thai Verdes come perform as a one day, but we still did camping. We had all kinds of activities going on. For someone who doesn't know what the Landslide Festival is, it's an adventure and a music festival. So it's beyond just music and just sitting there in a little, acre of land, just bumping to music. This place it's basically a destination where you have
Yeah.
free UTV rides going on. You have the bike park doing competitions, jump competitions. You've got competitions around the lake, volleyball competitions, sand volleyball competitions, belly flop competitions. You've got your food vendors, you've got your campground, competitions, music in the campground, music everywhere. So music is a big thing, but also just this idea of bringing people together of so many different races, backgrounds, interests, because that's what essentially I started doing down here in the very beginning, was bringing people together, different groups together. And that's what the
Yeah.
Landslide vibe / brand is bringing those people together and experiencing the love of music and adventure. So,
Yeah, it's
so
honestly like the venue is so cool. The whole event is super cool. It's kind of like a mini Disney World. You have so many different. There's volleyball going on, and there are competitions and belly flop competitions and like tons to do the entire time versus just going to a normal concert where it's just the music.
yeah,
It's really incredible, an incredible festival.
yeah. Well, thank you. But so those are some big learning and successes for that year. And so now we're headed into year 4, and we're looking to be profitable. We got everything locked in. It's very, for me, I'm excited for this year because I feel like um, a lot of the responsibility has been delegated, and I get to enjoy the event more. And we can plan for, you know, hopefully a smooth profit making business. And so the idea is this will be in, like this is we have a 20-year goal with this business. So it's going to be around for a long time. So this is just the very beginning of it. And it's on a good direction. So we're super excited, and financially it's going to be really good too. So
That's so cool. How did you guys divide up the responsibilities and the equity? And if you feel comfortable sharing the numbers on how you did equity with responsibility between each of the partners, how did you guys structure that?
yeah, so what I'll do is I'll kind of share. I won't share the exact equity numbers, but I'll share kind of what's going on.
Sure.
Um, and I feel like I've been learning so much during the landslide process and along. So I've been learning a lot with St. G's. I've been learning a ton of the landslide process. One of those lessons is like business negotiation. There is no blueprint for that. I would talk so many times to different people and get their opinions, and really what it is it's you've got to find a win-win for both of you. So that win-win looks so different in so many different realms. Um, and so where me and Russ, we had to figure out a win-win, and we went on equal partnership. Um, and so some people might look at that and be like, wow, you started the event. you give up, 50% of it. Well, and some people look at him and have said, you're going to invest the money. It's your venue, and you're giving him 50%. You're out of your mind. So it's like it really is relative on the person.
Okay.
And if the person is comfortable and is willing to work all of his efforts in towards the success, then I feel like you're going to be successful in the long run. I feel like 95% of businesses, I don't know what the exact number is, 95% that fail within the first 5 years.
Yeah.
I think it's not really money. I think it's internal issues. I think it's not only structure, but also partners. I think that's a huge downfall to a lot of people. So I think once you lock in, like, hey, towards the beginning, what am I comfortable? What is going to be a win-win for me? Okay, and then lock that in, and then shut that emotion off until, even to when you succeed, and you're like, whoa, you're looking at $55 million, and I have to split 20, so it's like you have to shut off that emotion in the future, that greed emotion, and focus on, like, what am I comfortable with, me personally? And if I'm comfortable with that, it doesn't matter how much they make. So
yeah,
huge lesson I've been learning, and so that's kind of what the situation between me and Russ were. And then for me and Calstina, and then we split some of the income from my side with Calstina to a point where she feels comfortable and I feel comfortable. Now that's going to change per person, right? That's the family member. I do think that family and business should mix, like the horse pull. The record was the two brothers that were raised together. When they were unified, their output was significantly more than anything reasonable. So I think it's the same with business. If that be the case, why not? Why not? It's because there is a lot of opportunity for tension. But if you can figure it out, if you can be humble enough and figure it out, then you can, do a lot of good. You can have a huge output with that person. So I think, it's going to be different than if I go into business with you. If I go into business with a stranger, it's going to be different than if I go into business with you, right? Percentages and all of that. There is not a blueprint. So that's the frustrating part of it. It's just, you got to figure out win-win for me and you. Got to figure out what's the win-win.
Yeah.
For me, my circumstances, this is what I'm looking for. For you, what are you looking for? So that was a huge learning process for me in that realm of working with a partnership and percentages.
Gotcha. Would you recommend, you talk about different stages, would you recommend starting out, if I'm an entrepreneur, I haven't done anything before, would you recommend going into a partnership from the very beginning, or would you say that after you have a successful cash flowing business, your second or your third business, that's when you would want to partner because you can go a lot further? What would you recommend there?
I think it depends on also your personality, your strengths, your weaknesses. I mean, if you are the type where it's a little bit harder to work with partners, then I believe that it's not a one size fit all. Like, hey, you need to force yourself to learn to work with a partner. No, I don't think that's what I would recommend. I would recommend finding your strengths, your weaknesses, and trying to grow on those. For me, I feel like I do work well with partners. I feel that is one of my strengths, and so I would suggest it for anyone of that sense. Because I do think, in my case, I do think you can go further. Yeah, you have to make more money, right? It's like that conundrum where there's less to share around. But instead of looking at it as less to share, okay, how do we get more, to where I'm comfortable now?
Sure.
I would go in it with partnership, but also a balance where, you have to provide for your family. So like, that's where the self-interest part needs to be vocalized and clear as days. Like, this is what I need, and I need to stick for my family. This is what the partnership I can give up right now. And if you can't find that, then I do think there's a lot of value of having a partnership. No partnership, and you just doing it to a certain level. Like, I do think that is valuable, especially in the earlier on stages of trying to get financially stable. So if there is a side to err on, I'd probably say it's the side to be individual, getting a business by yourself, because there are so much to learn. There's so much to learn. It only complicates it when you have a partner.
Yeah.
For me, I like partnerships. So.
But maybe when you have a partner, when you first understand how to do it yourself, then when you're going into a partnership, you have more to bring into the partnership versus, let's say both of us are newbies and we don't know what we're doing, and then we both go into business together. It's like, how are we really helping each other that much versus if I come in with business experience, you come in with business experience, and it's like, let's say that you split it 50-50. Well, the business only has to be twice as big in order for you to make the same amount of money. And I mean, with your same analogy, with the horses, like you're gonna be able to pull 3, 4, 5, 10 times as much. That's what Stephen Covey says in Seven Habits of I think it's what he calls synergy. Is like 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, it equals 3, 4, 10, 1,000, because you're working together.
Yeah. No, I do think that'd be the case, and especially when you are brand new with something.
Yeah.
My brother's wanting to start a lawn care business. I think it's not good for him to jump in a partnership. I think he needs to go out and feel the brute reality of some of life's lessons and business lessons.
Yeah.
Be able to, take it to a next venture or take it to something else. So yeah, no, I can agree. I can stand behind that with, building up your own value and then going into a partnership.
And I think some people want to get into a partnership. I know several people that want to be in partnerships, but it's more because they don't want to do the work versus they want to bring somebody else valuable and work together. And so it's kind of using them as a crutch. And then it's just having somebody who's dependent on you to do stuff, or you're dependent on them, and that doesn't really work out.
Yeah. And after like discussing and talking about it, it is interesting though, this idea of your first business venture, should you do it with a partner? So I was thinking about St. Jeezy, and I was doing it with a partner. I eventually had to, buy her out for different reasons and then do it alone. I did bring people on temporarily and different things like that. But if you're looking to go far with that business, I think that's where a partnership is good. If you're looking for it to be a step, it might be good to learn to do it alone, learn some basic levels. Because if I'm thinking about this business being a Fortune 500, I think about it bringing in, $35, $50 million a year, things like that. I do think a partnership is the route to go, because that's when you want to go far with the team. But if you're looking to get just financially stable, you're looking to start off, with a temporary business, I think it does provide. It's good to be alone on eventually then. I don't know. I'm a little bit indifferent with the whole thing.
Yeah.
But
okay.
It is a good thought to think about.
I think that I at least never even thought about it, and so I think maybe for some people that it's not even on the radar. Maybe it's good to just think about, and maybe you take your business to $250,000 a year, and then you're like, now I want to get to the next level. Let me bring on a partner who knows. I think that there are different combinations you could put together.
Yeah. So like I said before with percentages, there really isn't a blueprint. I think that's maybe the nice thing about capitalism and different things like that is it's always innovation. Oh, it's always innovating. Thoughts are always, partnerships,
Yeah.
businesses. So obviously there are bad ones, bad ideas and good ideas, but yeah, I know. I don't know about that one.
Okay. What does the future hold for you? What are you thinking about doing next? So you have Landslide. That's a part of the long-term strategy. What
Hmm.
what else?
Well, if I was to do everything over again, I think what I would do is go in with one thought, like really one thought on mind. It's get to step one. Step one in my mind is a self-automated, cash flowing small business. Don't try to go and tackle the world. Try to get something to provide cash flow for you and your family, and that will allow you freedom to then put a little bit more time and money into something a little larger. So taking it one step at a time. Um, so what I have going for me, well, I'm kind of backstepping, um, because I want to get to the point where, here real quickly, I want to get a small business that provides enough income for me and my family, and that's self-automated. So I've been chasing after, some other long-term interests and chasing after, bigger business ideas and ventures and some of these basic, foundational entrepreneurial, um, you know, what's it, just like foundation of being an entrepreneur. That
Yeah.
very first step, like I kind of bypassed that. So it's interesting with every step that I have been trying to go into the entrepreneurial, I'm learning different things and I'm getting to the point where it's like, whoa, I'm going after Boardwalk and I can't afford to buy a hotel on Boardwalk. With the
Yeah.
monopoly, I need to go and get those two brown ones, those two brown properties, and put hotels on them, and then be able to walk away and start going after bigger ones. So
Yeah.
uh, that's where I'm at right now. So I have a few different, I have an idea of what that may be, um, and I feel pretty confident, and I'm going down it. Doesn't mean it won't change, or it's not my passion, it's not my forever business, but that's my next direction is developing that cash flowing self automated business. And then once that goes on, then I know my path a little bit more clear because those are some of my ventures that I've been going on quite recently.
Sure. Sure.
So,
You know what's funny? Last night, because you and I talked about the Monopoly analogy. I think
yeah.
it's a great analogy. I actually had a dream last night. I was playing Monopoly, and I was like one of the people on the board, and I was like, it was like a life-size Monopoly type of thing. It was really fun.
That's cool.
It was really fun. Um, but not going in. I mean, you can go into sharing what the business idea is if you want, but more of what are a few of those things that you're like for my first business, because I think a lot of people are out there and they have this idea like I want to conquer cancer. I'm going to solve cancer for my first business, but their family isn't provided for. They're not provided for. They have lots of fear that they have money issues, that kind of stuff. So what for your business, what are a few of those things that you're like, here are those lessons that I'm going to implement into this step one business of cash flowing and automate. What are a few of those things?
I think a few of the lessons is, well, it's got to be self automated. It's got to be cash flow, right? So how do you do that? You got to find the best business model that you can think of, you can create. Um, when I think of the subscription model, I think for me that's one of the top, and you can agree with your business how
Definitely
it
agree.
can really expand that potential to automate your business. So having something where you can have a subscription and relying on them paying you, um, will And yeah, so having a subscription model is one of the fundamentals where I'm like, okay, I got to start. If I want this business, I need to figure out some of these basic um, steering blocks, or things like that. So having a subscription model, something that isn't specialized but is more just common. Or when I say that, it's not like when I say specialization, I feel like specialization is hard to duplicate.
Yep.
Right. I'm like, I'm making custom wood products, and this is my skill. Well, it's hard to like hire someone out with that skill. So I got to find a business that can be commonly duplicated. Right. So subscription model, something that is easy to be taught, and you can rely on other people to do it. And then making sure that there's a need and a clientele for it in your area or online or whatever it be. So I think those are the lessons that I've looked at, or I finally have kind of put together, and I'm kind of backstepping and be like, okay, I think this business might be good for it. But those are the lessons that I've realized is, you've got to figure out how to self-automate and cash flow. How do you self-automate? You've got to make it to where it's, taught and reasonable to be shared and relied upon. So like a simple business structure. So,
Yeah.
We've talked about simple ones, trash can cleaning. We've talked about one that I've been looking into is water delivery, where people pay for premium water, not tap water, essentially. So you get a lot of healthy, hippie kind of people that are willing to spend that money, and they're health conscious people. So there's other things like even lawn care businesses can be self-automated. And even within in the lawn care business, right, you might have a plethora of stuff that you do, but the way I would approach is, okay, how can I do a minimal, trainable, I don't want to, have this specialized area that I promise I do this and this and this for, but so whatever area you're going in, making it to where it can be easily replicated, and you can have a reliant income process through memberships or whatever that be.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I think I was talking with a friend, and we were talking about the subscription model. I was like, oh yeah, look at this subscription model. It's so awesome. And the guy was like, well, I don't know. I think people will just want it one time. I'm like, okay, I see what you're saying. Some people might want it one time. But let's run the numbers, because you can always vet out an idea if you just run the numbers. I'm like, okay, let's say I get 100 people a month, and in the end I make $10,000. So each of them pay $100. I get 100 people, I get $10,000 a month. Great. Let's say they just pay once, and every month I can get 100 new people. So I make 10,000 the first month, but then I don't keep any of those people, and I have to get a new 10,000, and then a new 10,000, a new 10,000, a new 10,000. You know what my cap is? It's 10,000. That's as much as I can ever make. And the only way I can make more is if I, one, get more customers, or two, I increase my prices, or three, I increase the amount of salesmen. So I can get 5 people, but I'm only going to be capped at 10,000 per person. Now let's say that I have a membership model, and the average member stays on for 8 months. So they're going to stay on the first month 10,000. Now I'm going to add a new 10,000. Now it's going to be 20,000. And then it's going to be 30, and then 40 and 50, 60, 70, and then it's going to be 80,000. And then the first month people are going to cancel after month 8, but I'm going to keep that 80,000 going on. That's my new cap. And now I have another factor, which is retention. And so I can increase the amount of retention to 9 months, 10 months, 11 months, and it goes from 80, 90, 100, or 100, whatever. And that's the beauty of having a subscription versus just a one-time thing.
Yeah, no, 100%. So that's kind of why I'm backtracking and making sure that I have that coming in. I think a reasonable goal is very much what you've done, right? You bring in a good amount to be able to invest into another business. For me, it's I want to get to a $10,000 profit after paying myself, right? So you have that $10,000 to save, pay off debt, to put into your next venture. For me, I already know my next venture. It's weekdays.
Yeah.
So this idea is, you know, this is probably the only idea that I will hold for the information part a little bit more, a little tight than a lot of other stuff, just because that is my tackle the world business. And maybe that's not the right order for it. Maybe it's a little bit further, but I do think that's one that I can, tackle the world with.
For sure.
And I would be comfortable moving on to that business after I have my family's needs met and disposable income after, some sort of safety net. So your personal finances is secured, safety net secured, and then you can go after it. So that's kind of my plan, is going after that, as well as having the landslide being a long-term potential for bringing me money. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because I was thinking about it as well. Like, me and my stage, if I went to tackle, let's say, one of the big ideas is revamping the airline industry. I think it's horrible, right? But if I tried to do that right now, there are so many other big dogs that I'm gonna get tons of lawsuits my way, and I'm gonna get tons of competition and tons of whatever, that it's gonna be so hard for me right now at this stage to tackle that big of an idea. But maybe down the road a little bit, maybe I bring on somebody else and I bring on other partners, and then because you have a huge idea like that, I think that you have to attack it really fast. You have to get into the market really fast and be able to expand really big, and so I think the bigger the idea, it's probably a little bit down the road.
Yeah, no, exactly. So that's kind of how I am, and I see it also where I, you were talking about what it would take for that. I also think it takes a lot of money, and so whatever you don't have, let's say you don't have a lot of money, let's say you don't have a lot of experience. If it's your idea, you're going to be giving up a lot of that control to compensate for that. So that's and like I do understand that you want to be on the control heavy side. But you do need control over your vision. You do need control over the direction of your business. So I think that's why it's also important to wait until you're in the situation where you can have more control in your own fate, business, and all of that. So
yeah, and that's why I think a lot of entrepreneurs are sad if they stay on after they take their company public and they still want to have a say. Like, I was reading about the owner of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, and he was like, it was a nightmare after we went public. Like, I didn't have any say. I mean, we all saw what happened with Steve Jobs. He was kicked out of Apple, right? Like, imagine you start up this amazing company and then you're kicked out of your own company because you lost the control.
Yeah. Yeah, so... Yeah, and I think if anything, I know I'm still super new in the game of being an entrepreneur, but what I finally have come to realize is the sequential order, right? there is that sequential order to business. And I think there's a sequential order to life, to religion, to everything. And it's super interesting how business is. It's just part of this ginormous game of life. Like, it's such a beautiful game, and it's so complex. And You've got business, you've got spiritual, you got physical, you got mental, you got family, you've got so many different areas.
Yeah.
And it's a game. It's not a game individually. It's a
Yeah.
game overall, right?
Yeah.
So being able to get better in certain areas, practicing in certain areas, it's been fun. So if anything that I've learned in my short time of playing this game, it's realizing, okay, there is an order, somewhat. I mean, like Monopoly, you can get part of the game is luck, and that's true. Like you can get lucky, you can be blessed, but there is also a sequential order in Monopoly to do well, in my opinion. So I think it's
Yeah.
the same with life, and what I've learned so far is, yeah, I want to get to a point where I start small. And you start small with the idea of it being self-operating, right? A big business idea. So you want to get to that point. So first, yeah.
Yeah. I think that that's a great note to end on. You know what they say, the luckier, what is it? The harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah. No, it's true. I do think when you're persistent, you do become luckier. What is that? There's a quote like that. Like the persistent become lucky, or something like that. And yeah,
Some
no,
proverb Solomon said like 4,000 years ago.
no, I think that's true.
Yeah.
So
Well, thanks so much, Ammon, for coming on. Loved having you.
yeah, no, this was super fun. Thank you, Addison.